Hey, what's up? And I guess you can call this another new segment. We currently have, or the date is currently the 12th of October, 2020. And as most of you guys may know, this is the day that the NBA season ended, aka our champions for this season are the Los Angeles Lakers after they beat Miami in 6. We are currently going to talk about We're going to talk a little bit about the series, but before that, you had something to say as well, didn't you?
Yeah, so this basically ends our predictions that we had starting from like the second episode of the podcast. We had individual awards, all NBA defensive teams, all NBA teams, and then we had the playoffs. And I guess I'll put up a picture of what the results are. So in the individual scores, we both had 12 points because our individual awards were basically all the same. Then for the all NBA teams, I scored 27 points while you scored 21. And all defensive teams, you had 13 points. I had 12 points. And after the playoffs, you totaled 20 points. I totaled 22, with the final score being 73-66 to your boy me. But it was a close battle. I realized like the biggest discrepancy was the all NBA teams. I only had one wrong. You had a couple, but I could see your reasoning for having some of the people's in. And I think what really put us out were like the playoff scores, because we basically got almost no points in the second round conference finals and finals, just because of the way things went out with Miami beating Milwaukee and then Denver beating the Clippers. I think we lost a lot of points there, so that was huge. But yeah, that's how it went, and I guess we can now talk about the series.
Yeah. So to be honest, I think other than Heat fans, everybody had the Lakers winning. I think everybody can agree on that. However, I'm not going to take anything away from Miami. I know they're not going to lose 4-1. I knew they at least had to lose 2, so I expected Lakers in 6. However, when I found out that, Goran Dragic and Bam Adebayo were missing for some of the games, I expected, to be honest, Lakers in 5. But, Jimmy Butler and the squad, they got one game off without 2 of those guys. So I gotta give the Heat some credit. Tyler Hero played well. Jimmy Butler played out of his mind. I remember, it was game 5. He played 47 minutes, and he was absolutely exhausted towards the end of the game. But we also got to see some, decent performances from Duncan Robinson during game 5. He had like 20-something points, dropping a lot of threes as he should. And we also got to see Kendrick Nunn play decently for Miami as well. But I guess the story for the finals at least would be LeBron and AD and Jimmy for the most part. LeBron was deservedly Finals MVP. I think he was the unanimous Finals MVP as well with 11, and I think he averaged easily over 20. I think he averaged around 20 something, 10 or so rebounds, 9 or 10 or so assists. I know it's a near triple-double stat line at least. But I think what got him over the edge for Finals MVP was during that one game where Anthony Davis had foul trouble, and he had around 15 points, I think. But other than that, LeBron and AD were just dominating through the entire playoffs.
Yeah. And, props to the Miami Heat players that stepped up in the absence of Adebayo and Dragic. It's such an unfortunate situation where you get to the finals. It's basically like a miracle run, even though probably the actual Heat team didn't really believe it was a miracle. But, they got so far, and in the first game, they lose like 2 of their 3 best players, arguably. So that was a big blow. And still, they found a way to win those 2 games. And like some of the games they lost, the Miami Heat, they're also kind of like, it could have gone either way. But Jimmy Butler was just amazing. The 2 games they won, he had 30-point triple-doubles. And in one game, he had a 40-point triple-double. As you said, Duncan Robinson was doing solid. And like players who didn't really get much playing time, in like Myers Leonard and Kelly Olynyk, they found a way to step up on the offensive end. On defensive end, we can speculate if they had any contributions there, but as Jimmy Butler said, they'll be back, and what I saw from them was just like it's a perfect team, and like they mesh so well together. So I will be excited to see what they have to offer next season. But yeah, that's for Miami. For the Lakers, I think when we started talking about the Lakers in the bubble, we said they needed like a third guy who could score. But I think it turned out that like they had multiple third guys, and like any other game it could be a different guy. One game it could be Markieff Morris. One game it could be Kuzma. Game 6 we saw Rajon Rondo. I think he had a stat line of 18, 4, and 4, and he wasn't feeling that well before the game. So it just shows you like you would think they have like veteran players on minimum contracts, but they can actually contribute, and we saw that the whole series.
Yeah, I knew a few episodes ago I talked about the importance of experience, and I think that was just a clear showing of experience, how valuable experience in the playoffs is. You could see Rajon Rondo, he could control the floor, and he hit the threes when he had to. Although he's not a capable three-point shooter throughout his career, in the playoffs he's been proven year out to step it up. So I'm just proud of him to contribute to both the Lakers and the Celtics franchise, because now it's 17 apiece. Plus, also what I think is crazy funny is that Dion Waiters won his championship a week ago, once Miami qualified. So I think that's funny as well, because he would have gotten a ring either way.
Oh, he would?
Yeah,
he got released though.
No, but he still played for the
count?
Heat. He still played for the Heat during that season.
I didn't think about that. That's pretty interesting. Yeah.
He technically played for the Heat, so I guess it's a win-win for Dion either way. But also, do you think Demarcus Cousins should get a ring? Although he barely played and he was technically a part of the team, he got released. Do you think he
didn't play? He didn't play at all.
He didn't play at all, but he was technically a part of the team at some point. Do you think he should still get his ring?
I guess he should, but I think it's every team's decision to make.
Yeah.
I remember they tried to give the Golden State Warriors, they wanted to give a ring. I think it was to Omri Caspi after they won, but he declined. Or I might be wrong, but somebody declined their ring, and just because he didn't feel like a part of the team. I don't know. I think the Lakers might give a ring to DeMarcus. He might have had like a huge contribution to like the bench players and the locker room.
Yeah, because
it's something you might never know.
Yeah, because there's a lot of things that the NBA fans that don't see that goes on behind the scenes when all the cameras are off. So, like, that makes me think about players like Udonis Haslem and Nick Collison when he played for OKC, the ones who've been there for years. Although they're not the first name that you think of, it's their loyalty and experience that gets them this far, and it's clear to see how Udonis Haslem got so respected. But I remember a few days ago I saw Udonis Haslem top 10 plays video. Mans was clutch as hell, hitting all these clutch shots in game winners and stuff. So it's clear that he's a Miami. Everybody knows he's a Miami legend, but do you think he's at the specter where he'll get his jersey retired?
He could. I don't think Miami has many jerseys retired, and I can see how in Oklahoma they retired Collison's jersey. I can definitely see how they retire UD's jersey, because he's taken on that mentorship role, but he's had some good years with the Dwayne Wade and Shaquille O'Neal team. So I think he basically embodies the Heat culture.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's crazy to me because people forget that he was actually a solid player when he was playing for the Heat during those Wade and Shaq years.
Even the LeBron years, he was still a serviceable player.
Oh yeah. Didn't he come off the bench for Chris Bosh during some period?
Yeah. He was a role player. So
hey,
even here now he gets some playing time, but it's mostly garbage time. But he's played his time, and now he's just like taking on that mentorship role.
Yeah, I know. The crazy thing is he's been in Miami almost all his life. I think he's a Miami. I think he was a Miami kid before the league. I think he played for the Hurricanes as well. in college, and he plays for the Heat as well. So I think he's been in Miami all his life.
Oh yeah, college in Florida.
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah, but I think we've recapped the entire series. Also, congrats to the Lakers. I
wanted to shout out Quinn Cook and J.R. Smith, especially Quinn Cook, just because he got left behind.
Take a U-turn. Oh my goodness.
That was funny as hell.
Also,
I think the Heat Lakers team bonds really well. So
yeah, did you see Rajon Rondo's kid?
Oh no, what happened?
No, Rajon Rondo was casually just sitting on the court, and Rajon's kid just sipped champagne off the bottle.
Oh gosh.
Oh, that was good.
But I guess it's like one in a lifetime chance. I guess you could let your kid do that.
Yeah. Also, I'm waiting for the once in a lifetime chance LeBron will smoke weed with his kid, but I don't know. I really don't know. I really don't know yet. But
he's probably gonna take out that belt now. Daddy about to come home.
Oh my god.
But yeah.
Also, before I go off topic, I'm gonna say I'm really happy for the players such as Dwight Howard and Anthony Davis. They finally get the rings they deserve. I'm especially happy for Dwight, knowing how it ended with LA in the first time, and he said he wanted to, make it good again, and then he finally delivered. So that just makes me happy. Plus, he just he had to hit a three. He just had to hit the 3-pointer in the end of the game.
He tweeted in like 2013 that he was thankful for the Lakers for whatever they did, and he said he hopes to make it up for them sometime. It's just a perfect ending 7 years later.
Yeah, it's just meant to be, I guess. Also, again, congratulations to the Lakers, and also congratulations to the Heat. They had a crazy successful playoff run. I don't think anybody expected their run as well. However, I don't think it's a surprise that the Lakers won either. However, I wouldn't be mad either way of who won. And also, the Heat, they went out like, champions at heart and stuff. So that's all I can say for that regard.
I think this has been a season of success, even though it ended like a couple months after, just because of COVID. I think what Adam Silver has done, 0 like positive COVID cases in the whole bubble. Like you just have to take your hats off for Adam Silver. What an amazing job he's done in Orlando.
Now that the season's over, we have seen a lot of what each team can do during the playoffs. Some were good, some were not as good. So we're going to give our own personal opinion on where we rank each team's playoffs performance this season. We're planning on going from the Eastern Conference 1 through 8 to the Western Conference. So we'll start off with, I guess we can start off with Milwaukee and, wait, who did Milwaukee? Orlando, right? They played Orlando.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for Orlando, I have them at C, just because it can't be D, just because they had to be crazy bad. However, Orlando did their thing, nothing too exceptional, but it's nothing, it's nothing out of the ordinary either. I put them at C tier, and for Milwaukee, I'm gonna put them in C tier as well. They beat Orlando, which everybody expected, and I think I would want to put them in, for example, D tier. I know many people would maybe put them at D tier because they didn't play as well versus Miami, but I put them at C tier just because Miami's the only team that had a game plan for them, and they just countered Giannis. But other than that, without him, they won one game, which I have to give them a little bit props for. So I'm gonna put them at C tier.
Well, when I ranked my teams, it was mostly where they went as compared to what they were believed to go to. So for Orlando, I also have them at C tier. They did take one game off the Milwaukee Bucks, but knowing that Jonathan Isaac was injured, Fournier and Aaron Gordon were mostly injured for the bubble, I couldn't really put them higher, but there's no point in putting them at D tier just because, they took off one game from the Milwaukee Bucks, and I think Orlando has a lot of, thinking to do of what they want to do next seasons. But Milwaukee, I had to put them at D tier just because everyone expected them to go to the finals, and they just completely choked in the semifinals. Not that the Heat weren't prepared or anything. The Heat were super prepared, but I think Milwaukee, the whole bubble situation for them, they didn't really play good in the regular bubble season. as well as for the playoffs. They looked a little bit off. Bledsoe and Middleton weren't really the players you wanted them to be, as well as Giannis was a little bit injured. So I can't really put them anything higher but D because it was just a huge disappointment.
Yeah, that's understandable. I won't be mad at D tier for them as well. So for the next teams, we have Toronto and Brooklyn. For Brooklyn, I put them at C tier, just like Orlando. Nothing special, although I'm very happy they brought Jamal Crawford. I'm glad he finally gets to play for a team. But I don't think there's anything noteworthy to say. Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot, he played okay. Tyler Johnson, I don't know how Tyler Johnson did, but I've always been a fan of him since Miami. Jamal Crawford's back, and the whole Brooklyn team was gone. So at least that the fact that they made it to the playoffs was surprising enough. But for playoff performance, I'm gonna put them at C tier just because it wasn't anything out of the ordinary for their expectations. But for Toronto, I'm gonna put them at B tier here. They played well versus Boston. They lost in 7, right? It was 7.
Yep.
Yeah, they lost in 7. However, I wouldn't be mad if they necessarily beat Boston. I wouldn't be surprised if they did. But I'm gonna put them at B tier just because they performed a tad underwhelming than what I expected them to. I think the OG shot in Game 3 gave them a huge momentum boost, which propelled them to play even better. But I personally expected a little bit more from them, especially Pascal Siakam and players such as Marc Gasol. But at least there's some bright spots for that team, such as Lowry played well, Fred VanVleet is good, Norman Powell broke out a little bit more. But to be honest, I'd say B is good. Like, it's good. So I'd put them at B tier.
I have similar to you. I have Brooklyn at C tier, just because the way their team was structured, you didn't really believe they would do anything in the playoffs, and that's what it was. They basically just had Karis LeVert handling the load. It was just unfortunate to see how many people were injured, but I think it was for the better that most of them didn't go, just so they could preserve themselves for next year. Brooklyn has a bright future ahead of them. They have a nice core of young and old players, and really good players in Kyrie and KD. So I have them at C tier, and for Toronto, I have them in B tier. Second seed in the East, you would say their floor would probably be a semifinals sweep, and ceiling would be getting to the finals. I think they're kind of in the middle of that, so I put them in B tier, losing in 7 to Boston. It could have been a sweep for Boston, but OG helped them a lot. Pascal definitely got exposed in that series, so yeah, I think they have a lot of thinking to do of how to incorporate Pascal so he can be a better player on offense. So that's why I have them in B tier and not anywhere higher. But it was I guess it was a hard season for Toronto, and they have a lot of decisions to do because Marc Gasol is a free agent, Ibaka's a free agent, Fred VanVleet's a free agent. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, that's Toronto for me.
Yeah. I guess for the next teams, we have Boston and Philadelphia. At Philadelphia, I was tempted to put them at D tier. However, I'm going to put them at C tier just because they were missing, their 1-2 combo in Ben Simmons. So I'm putting them at C tier. Although they got swept, I'm not gonna rag on them for being swept. But I at least expect them to get one game with a healthy Joel Embiid. But I didn't expect them to get swept. But I'm gonna put them at C tier just because Ben Simmons was out, and I'm not gonna knock them out so much just because of that. If they would have had Ben Simmons, I believe the series would have gone differently. I expected them to at least win 2. But if everything went right for Philadelphia, I would expect them to force a Game 7. But that would not happen. So I'm putting them at C tier. But for Boston, I'm going to put them at A tier. Now, the first series they played versus Philadelphia, they swept, of course. We got to see a little glimpse of how it would force set in the playoffs. Versus Toronto, I expected... I don't know what to expect necessarily. I expected Toronto to beat them, but looking how Boston played compared to Toronto the first 2 and 3 games, I was like, okay, Boston's gonna win in 6. Boston's gonna probably win in 5, unless if that OG shot went in. But Boston pulled through in Game 7, and I was really happy to see how Marcus Smart played. The resurgence of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown as well. Kemba Walker was struggling a bit. That's why I put them at A tier, as well as how they played versus Miami. It's clear that Boston still needs to improve with their bigs and rebounding, and especially their pick and roll defense with their center, which which was a clear factor in them losing. But however, I'd say overall their season was a success. I think A tier is fully deserved for Boston. Plus, it's only going to get better from here.
I put 76ers in the D tier, just because I don't think even without Simmons, I think you were supposed to win at least 1 or 2 games. Just because if you look at the matchup of Embiid versus Daniel Tice, you would think Embiid would probably body him, which he did, but at the end of the games, he started shooting jump shots, and they just fell apart. And their team is not bad without Ben Simmons. They have Tobias Harris, they have Josh Richardson, Al Horford, but the way the team is structured, it's just not working. And even without Simmons, they just look bad. So I had to put them at D tier. And for Boston, I put them at B tier. If you told me at the start of the season that they were going to be 2 wins away from the finals, I would probably think they lost to the Milwaukee Bucks, and I would be fine with that. But just the way they lost to the Miami Heat, struggling to beat their zone, kind of left a bad taste in my mouth, and I'm sure it left a bad taste in the Boston Celtics players' mouth. So I had to put them in B tier. A little bit disappointing that they couldn't pull through and finally get to the finals after being to the conference finals 3 of the last 4 years. But it is what it is, and I completely agree with you on the pick and roll defense and getting a better center. I think Daniel Tice is nice, but I think they should explore the trade market and maybe even drop the center. But, those are discussions for future episodes, so we'll see, I guess.
Plus, there are trade rumors with Oladipo and Miles Turner, so maybe that'd be an improvement. I think Miles Turner would be a great improvement, but, we'll see what happens later. Maybe we can draft a center, but who knows?
There's not really much of there's not really a broad availability of centers who could defend players like Embiid and Bam Adebayo, the things we need to get past them in the playoffs.
Yeah,
but it's going to be interesting. Danny Ainge has a lot on his plate right now.
Yeah, also with the how centers are going, you rarely see players go back to the basket, and post up, and it just so happens to be that players such as Sabonis, Adebayo, and Embiid are those kinds of players. So I guess it's a little bit tougher to find a matchup versus them, knowing how the center position is being revolutionized these past few years.
I think Adebayo is more that face-up center, but I agree on Embiid.
Yeah, Embiid is one of really the only elite post-up players, but if you force him to shoot, I guess it will. But yeah, I guess we can just save that for another time. But I guess for the next series, we have the Miami Heat and we have the Indiana Pacers. Starting off with Indiana Pacers, I put them at C tier. Or it was either C, for me, it was either C or D. I expected Indiana to play a little bit better than they did. I expected T.J. Warren to play good, but he just, he came back to earth and averaged his, normal numbers because they finally had a proper game plan for him. But other than that, they were missing Sabonis, which is huge because he's their all-star. But it was nothing noteworthy. They got swept, didn't they? By Miami?
Yeah.
They got swept, but however, it was just clear that, Miami were the far better team, even if I think Sabonis did play as well. But I'm not going to knack on them too much just because nobody really expected Indiana to go past the second round as well. So I'm going to put them at C tier. But for Miami, I think it's obvious that they're S tier. They were underdogs from the second round, I guess you would say. Or not necessarily the underdogs from the second round, I wasn't surprised that they won, but because of, the seedings and the story with Giannis, how he wanted to win again, but it didn't happen.
I would say they're underdogs, though. I would say that.
Yeah, I would still say, they're technically underdogs. Yeah, I think also matchup favors as well, They were the perfect team to stop Milwaukee as well.
Yeah.
But other than that, I'd give them S tier because, nobody expected them to, not many expected them to beat Boston. And they did it in 6 as well, and they completely exposed Boston's system with their zone defense. And, what hasn't been told already these past few weeks, Tyler Hero's resurgence, the zone defense, the depth, Jimmy Butler's leadership, absolutely everything, the Heat culture. Plus, in the finals, you got to see everything that Miami was made of, The depth, aka when Dragic and Adebayo got injured, they had other players who stepped up. Jimmy Butler proves that he's a born winner. Played 47 minutes during one game. Had 40-point triple-doubles, 30-point triple-doubles. A lot of heart, a lot of good games as well. But, however, although they didn't win, their season was a major success. One of the biggest successes this season.
Yeah, completely agreed. I did put Indiana in the D tier. I know they were missing Sabonis, but I kind of guessed, they're that hard, gritty team that always puts up a battle, and they got swept by the Heat. You could argue that the Heat were, at already starting to click right then, but I still expect a little bit more from Indiana, who have players like Brogdon, Oladipo, who was kind of, still rusty. TJ Warren, who was playing good, but as you said, they had a game plan for him, and he didn't really show up as much. Miles Turner, and it's just a disappointment. I can see how they decided to fire their coach, Nate McMillan. So I guess for them, as well as with the trade rumors, they're also gonna have a tough summer, or I guess you can call it autumn now, with deciding what they want to do next, and what is their goal and their future.
It's tough to figure out what these middle teams are gonna do, just because so many, like, the teams that are supposedly good, they're just going to improve, and I don't see Indiana necessarily improving. You can make the case for Milwaukee. They're probably going to be 1 to 2 seed, in my opinion, depending how Brooklyn will play, because they're going to improve a lot. Boston's going to improve a lot. Who knows what Philly will do? We know what Miami can do as well, but will they do better as well as Toronto? So it's tough to say what will happen to teams like Indiana, who lost versus Miami.
Especially with teams like Washington coming back as well.
Washington coming back as well. But in my opinion, for teams such as, Orlando and maybe Indiana, maybe they should blow it up because of the trade rumors and how they will fare later. Plus, other teams on the resurgence. In my opinion, Atlanta will do better the next season, and as well as Washington, of course. But we'll see.
Indiana has a nice core of Sabonis and maybe Brogdon, so they can definitely rebuild around those pieces, and with good drafting and signing, they could get back. But Oladipo's getting a little bit older. He's had his injury history. They could do anything. It's gonna be interesting to see what they decide to do, because it literally, they could go one way or the other. There is no limits to what they could do this offseason.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And for the Heat, I had to put him at S tier. A brilliant run to the finals. I was debating on putting him in the A tier, just because I was looking at, from the perspective of a Heat fan, them, not winning the championship. But I think overall, none of us expected the Heat to go to the finals, and now, again, they're a team to be frightened from in the Eastern Conference. If we thought there were only teams like Milwaukee, Brooklyn, and Boston, the top teams, I think now you can definitely add Miami to there, because they're a name that's going to stick if you have Jimmy Butler there.
Yeah, I think for these packs next years, they're probably going to have maybe 4 to 5, fringe all-star players. They're going to have that 1 to 2 guaranteed all-stars, but they're going to have these next few players, the young core of 3 with, Dunn, Robinson, and Hero. I think they're going to, for the past next years, those guys are going to be in the all-star conversation for the next few years. Because, the older they get, the more experience they get. Plus, when rookies come in, they don't necessarily know the ins and outs of the league yet, compared to the sophomore and the third years. So it's only going to get better for those players.
Oh, yeah.
But I guess we can now move to the Western Conference. We had the Lakers and who were the 8th seed for the
Trailblazers?
The Trailblazers. Yeah, for Portland, I had to put them at C tier. nothing out of the ordinary. Damian Lillard got injured. I can't believe Charles Barkley said they were going to beat the Lakers with 2 top 5 players in the league. But plus, even with Damian Lillard, they didn't necessarily win as much. And when Damian got injured, it was just, to rub salt on the wound. However, for advancing to the playoffs and, doing what they did, I put them at C tier, just because they were the 8th seed and they had a little bit of injury problems. But for the Lakers, overall, I'm going to put them at S tier. They won the first round 4-1. They won the second round with Houston 4-1. They beat Denver 4-1, and then they beat a resilient Heat team 4-2. I'm not going to knock them down for A tier for beating Miami in 6. I still believe Miami's a great team, and they'd put up a fight against anybody. So overall, for winning the chip as well and the way they did it, I'm putting them at S tier. LeBron was great. Anthony Davis was great. Rondo was great. I don't want to get started on Danny Green. However, I still think it's idiotic that he got death threats just because he missed one shot. Although it was for the chip, and although he's been struggling all playoffs long, it's too much just giving a player death threats just because he missed a shot. It's not as if it sealed the entire playoffs for them. But nonetheless, I'm glad Danny Green won. I'm glad everybody on the Lakers won, especially Dwight Howard. But all in all, I'm giving them an S.
Danny Green has now won, chips from 3 teams: San Antonio, Toronto, now Los Angeles. I think he's had a successful career, and he's definitely going to be regarded as, a good 3-point shooter. It is unfortunate that he had his slump right there, but I do think it's idiotic that people started getting death threats. It's just a basketball game, man. Nothing about other life stuff should matter, especially since we've got other things happening. For the Lakers, obvious S tier. You could argue that their run to the finals was quite easy just because they didn't have to face the Clippers or the Milwaukee Bucks. But you could also argue that they're the most consistent teams because all the other teams lost. So the Lakers, they're one of the favorites, but teams like the Clippers and the Milwaukee Bucks, they're up there with them, in terms of the strength on paper. But at the end, it was just the Lakers standing alone because they were the most consistent team in the NBA. And I think their record was like 54-0 after they had a lead after the third quarter. Yeah. So that just proves how consistent they were throughout the year and the playoffs. And LeBron, of course. You can never fault LeBron in the playoffs. So that's an obvious S tier. And for the Trailblazers, they sneaked into the playoffs. They did win the first game. I think it was the first game. They won the first game against the Lakers, making it 1-0. Which is why I put them in the C tier. Just because they did get off one game. They did, scare them a little bit. But Nurkic came back kind of late. They had depth issues, even though Gary Trent was a really nice player. They needed a little bit more. And as you said, they also got injured. They have some thinking to do as well. They're one of the teams that, has to decide what they're going to do in the offseason. But, I love to watch the Trailblazers play. So, but for now, for the playoffs, I had to put them in C tier.
Yeah, so for the next teams, we have the Clippers and the Mavericks. I'm going to start with the Mavericks. I think they get a B tier here. We clearly see what Luka Doncic is all about. If not, he's already proved it since his first rookie games and stuff. But this was just crazy from Luka. I loved the constant tension and the constant back and forth with the teams. We saw Morris. I think it was Markieff Morris who played. It was Markieff who plays on the Clippers, right?
Marcus.
Yeah, my fault. Marcus Morris. He plays on the Clippers, and he had the beef with Luka. Montrezl Harrell had the beef with Luka. Seth Curry had the beef with Paul George, and I think Paul George had that little beef with Doc Rivers because Paul George did his thing with with Doc Rivers' daughter. My bad. But all in all, I'm giving my Mavericks a B. Luka Doncic was heroic. Seth Curry played well a few games. Tim Hardaway was decent a few games. We got to see a glimpse of, how role players had to step up during Porzingis' absence. So I'm going to put them at B tier. Now, for the Clippers, I can't even fathom how disgusted I am with them. I'm putting them at the bottom feeders of the D tier, dude. They beat the Dallas team, which is expected. They beat them in 6, but then they choked a 3-1 lead versus Denver. And you know, what can I say? You know, they were kind of cocky. You know, Patrick Beverley said the next 5 years are mine to Steph. Lou Williams went to a club. I don't even want to start with Paul George. I think he was just a ghost for most of the series. And Kawhi Leonard, he showed up for most of the playoffs except for the last game. So I think they're the clear D tier for this playoff run.
But there is one thing you could, one good thing that you can take out from this. At least they can go to Cancun with Damian Lillard.
Oh my god! Oh my fucking god! Yeah, Cancun in 3. Cancun in 3. But yeah, man, like they've already been roasted enough these past few weeks.
Yeah. And it's Doc Rivers, the history with Doc Rivers and choking 3-1 leads. He's done that before. A couple of years back against Houston. I had them in D tier as well. They did lose in 6 to they won Dallas in 6 games. It was a hard fought battle. I guess Dallas is a good team, but I guess they could have done it in like 5 games. Just because how deep the Clippers are. But then, as you said, choking a 3-1 lead to the Denver Nuggets. It was really disappointing. They just couldn't close it out. They had a couple close games, and then in the final game, we all know what happened with everybody missing. Nobody showed up. Even Kawhi Leonard didn't show up. So it was just a disappointment. You could say that they could be in the C tier just because how close they were to advancing. But I guess if you look at overall, was their season a success? Hell no.
Not even close.
Big disappointment.
Big close. Nah. Was their season a success? That's the last thing they should ask the Clippers right now.
Well, Paul George probably thinks it's a success.
Oh my god.
He said it wasn't a championship or bust.
Hey, it's not a championship or bust. Proceeds to be on the 2nd seed. My god.
But, they have a lot of thinking to do. I heard something with, they wanted to get rid of Paul George. I don't think that's going to happen. I think those are just rumors. They need to find a coach since Doc Rivers is now fired. I think most of the team is going to be intact. Maybe a couple changes here and there. Their team was pretty stacked. Going to be interesting what they decide to do. And I think they're going to be on the lookout for next year. I definitely think they have a chance to win. Just because you have Kawhi Leonard on your team, that's good enough to have yourself a chance. And for the Dallas Mavericks, I agree with you as well, putting them in B tier. You didn't expect them to beat the Clippers, and taking 2 games from them is kind of what I expected from them, so I put them in B tier. Even with KP being out, Luka just played amazing. And again, in free agency, they have a lot of thinking to do. I think if Tim Hardaway Jr. decides to decline his player option, they have like 20 to 25 million in cap space. So they could sign that third player, that third offensive player to help them. And I think Dallas is a team to look out for in the future because, Doncic and Porzingis is going to be there for a while, in my opinion.
Yeah,
that's what I have there.
All I hope is that Porzingis stays healthy because he's been plagued with injuries these past few years. That's all I pray for, honestly.
Yep. Same.
I just want a healthy full season with Doncic and Porzingis, and you can see what they'll do. Although we saw glimpses. Okay, I think we saw glimpses of what they can do this season. But
now even Doncic was injured this year. He played like 50 something games.
Yeah. But, plus his play style is perfectly for avoiding injury because he takes a lot of shots and he passes a lot. But yeah, Dallas, they're gonna be on the rise. But I guess we can move from Dallas and the Clippers to now Denver. And Denver played Utah, 3-6. Yeah. For Utah, I'm gonna put them at B tier. They forced 7 versus Denver. Plus, it was a nail biter in the end. I think Denver and Utah was one of the most entertaining series I've seen in a long time. Donovan Mitchell played out of his mind. They forced 7 versus Denver without one of their best players in Bogdanovic, who would have been crucial for them during this playoff
I even forgot about that.
Yeah, I'll get my reasoning for Denver being where they are because of that. But Utah, they surprised a lot of people, being up 3-1 and also choking 3-1. But however, I'm not going to deny the fact that they played exceptional. Donovan Mitchell just proves why he eats and breathes the game. And he's just going to probably use this as motivation. Rudy Gobert shutting down the whole league. He played okay as well. He played decently as well. But, however, we also got to see a little bit of Mike Conley here and there. However, maybe they should move on from Mike Conley. Maybe they'll give him a little bit more time for next season because they need him to gel and stuff like that. But overall, I don't know where I'll stand for Utah next season. But, however, I'll put Utah at B tier. But for Denver, I'm going to put them at, I'd say between A and S tier. Because I put them at mostly A tier. Solely for the reasons that they were down 3-1 versus Utah without Bogdanovic. Plus, they struggled a little bit here and there. But they came back from 3-1, which proves resiliency. And what puts me in between the A and S is the Clippers series that they won from 3-1. Jokic and Murray were playing out of their minds. I know Murray was playing, he was playing his head off. And Jokic was playing like he's the best center in the NBA. And when they played versus the Lakers, I'm glad they took at least one game. And when they came back from when they were down 3-1, people were like, are they going to do it again? A few questions were arising. People were believing so because they've done it twice already. But LA is just too much. And I expected them to take at least 2 games versus them. So that's why I put them at A tier. However, I was a little bit hesitant maybe putting them at S. But I think because they're the 3rd seed, they were down 3-1 versus the 6th seed. Without one of their top 3 players, I just had to put them at A tier.
Yeah, for me, I have Utah in the C tier. I actually completely forgot about the fact that they didn't have Bogdanovic. I think it's just been a long time since that first round. One was like the start of September or like end of August. Yeah, good job for them on getting a 3-1 lead, but I think what ultimately doesn't make me put them in the B tier is just because how they choked it. Of course, it could have gone either way. It's just one shot away from advancing, and who knows what could have happened against the Los Angeles Clippers. But just the way it ended, them choking it, I had to put them at C tier. I think I like your argument with putting them in the B tier. You had them.
Yeah.
I can see that argument, but I have to put them in the C tier just because they really didn't advance. And for the Denver Nuggets, I also put them in the A tier. I agree with all the facts you said about the resiliency and everything. But just because they were down, like if you told me they went to the conference finals, their season is a massive success. Just because it's the first time getting in the conference finals. Or wait, was it oh yeah, they lost last season against Portland. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
so
it was the second round.
Yeah. So, Jokic was playing great. So was Jamal Murray. And you could see also one of the teams that was starting to click at the right time. But Los Angeles just overwhelmed them. But overall, if they didn't go down 3-1 twice, I would say that they're a team that comfortably wins. But just because they have to crawl their way back shows that they can do it. But it doesn't really give me optimism that they can beat every team consistently. Consistently being like that they're up in the series and they close it out. They have to crawl for every win, which is of course respectable. But next time I'm hoping that they're the ones up 3-1 and that they close the series instead of having to crawl back. But overall, I'm really happy about Denver. They have young players in their squad. Of course, we've talked about the Drew Holiday trade. I really hope it happens. I really hope Denver gets Drew Holiday. But they have a bright future, and I'm really happy for them this season.
Yeah, I like your argument as well for being in the which tier was it? B tier, right?
Who?
Denver.
I put them in the A tier.
Yeah. Okay, but it was a good argument with they should probably be a little bit more consistent, but we'll see next season. We'll see what happens. But for our last series, we have Houston and OKC. For Houston, I put them at B. Wouldn't be surprised if they beat OKC. and I didn't necessarily expect them to beat LA because they have this ultra small ball lineup, and Anthony Davis is a great rim protector and a great rebounder. Plus, he can guard many positions. So I'm putting them at B tier. I think Houston are a little bit at a standstill. A little bit, because I don't know if they're necessarily going to improve. Because, their playing style is very different, and it's a high risk, high reward kind of thing for them, They have Russell Westbrook, who can't shoot a three to save his life. However, his mid-range game is good. James Harden, who's been scoring leader for a few years now. But he doesn't necessarily get as much done in the playoffs. But with Houston's style, I'm not a believer that the style of play that they're playing is built for the playoffs. Most necessarily ISO ball and corners threes, just standing there. If they try and maybe switch it up a little bit, they could maybe do a little bit better, but because they have such a small lineup, they have to space the floor. So I'm putting them at B tier for that. But for OKC, based on the entire season and the playoffs and the heartbreak, I'm going to put them at B tier as well. Lorenz Dort, I'm glad that he performed well during Game 7, although he couldn't shoot to save his life the previous games. Chris Paul proved many people wrong. Shai and Dennis Schroeder were obvious bright spots this season, as well as Danilo Gallinari and Adams doing their regular thing. But all in all, I'd say I'd put them at B tier. I wouldn't be surprised if they won. I wouldn't be surprised if they lost. I had them going 7, but knowing that it's a nail biter in Game 7, and Lorenz Dort unfortunately tried to throw it off James Harden, but he jumped over. It is what it is, but I can already tell based on how Lou Dort, acted after the game, he's going to be in the league for a long time, and I think he's going to be mostly a winner for years to come.
OKC find a way to, get these gems all the time. Lorenz Dort. They also found Andre Roberson. Players who can play. They're not necessarily high in the draft, but, really good players.
I guess
especially Lorenz was undrafted. That's why I think it's a huge story for him.
I guess it's more like they know how to find players who know their roles, such as teams like Miami, for example.
Yeah. Miami is like the best team in finding players who, haven't been drafted. A la Kendrick Nunn and Duncan Robinson. So that's that. And I think this Tyler here, no, he was
13th,
Yeah, but he was drafted. I'm saying like the players who didn't get drafted but still came to be good contributors to the team.
Oh yeah, also Udonis Haslem, he was also undrafted.
Oh really?
I think so, yeah.
That's interesting. So yeah, this is the first time that I'm gonna put a team who lost higher in the tier list than the team who actually won the series. I have OKC in the B tier. Didn't really expect them to get in the playoffs at all, and making them play against the Houston Rockets, so I think kind of a bad matchup just because Steven Adams can't really shoot and he has to defend outside the perimeter. But the way Chris Paul, like the resurgence of Chris Paul this year, the improvement of Shea as well as Dennis Schroeder, it was a really nice team to watch, and I really enjoyed watching OKC. They're going to have a lot on the table, thinking what they want to do with Chris Paul. Do they want to bring him back for next season to mentor Shea? Or do they want to, trade him to get some more assets to the boatload of assets they already have? OKC has a really bright future with like enormous amount of picks, so they have a lot of thinking to do as well as what they want to do. But for Houston, I'm at C tier, just because the way they lost to the Los Angeles Lakers. They also did take one game off, giving it that little bit of scare. But in the end, Los Angeles was just overwhelming them every game, and you could see how they need a new coach. And I think the way the team is structured right now, they're in a little bit of trouble because they don't really have cap space, and I think the new coach would probably prefer a center instead of PJ Tucker. And I'm really hoping the new coach makes them shoot more mid-range instead of just threes and layups. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think
what is your opinion?
Yeah,
threes and layups.
I think it's like the league is going towards that. The mid-range game is dying, but you're gonna have to score in a plethora of ways to be more successful. If you constantly do the same recipe over and over again, it gets boring. AKA, you'll find it's easier to stop it, it's like you know what to expect, you know what to do. And if they don't change that, how are they going to improve? You have to maybe be more uncomfortable to, experience growth as a team. So I think, like, what I've noticed with all the teams is that they do back cuts, they do ball movement, they get a lot of assists, they run on the break. Houston's a great team running on the break, but their half-court offense is a little bit stagnant. So I think they need to, yes, incorporate more mid-ranges, incorporate the best shot they can get at all times, because if they constantly do the same thing, it'll get stopped easier. That's all.
I think Kobe said something like, "Oh yeah, the way that Houston is playing right now," or was it about Harden specifically? That the way he's playing, they're not going to win a championship like that, and it's proved. They're kind of like
I think it's
gone up against a wall.
I think it's a little bit. I think it's a little bit of both. I think it was about Houston, but I have to say a little bit of both, just because, Harden hasn't had that much playoff success ever since he was playing with the Thunder, which was one of the most fun teams to watch.
But yeah, for Houston, I think mid-ranges would be probably preferred, just because Russell Westbrook is so good at his mid-range jumper, as well as I don't think Harden is that bad at mid-ranges. He just doesn't shoot a lot of mid-ranges. Most of like the greatest like players right now, they have a good mid-range shot. Jimmy Butler, Chris Paul, even LeBron James, he has a really good mid-range shot. And I think that's what kind of and Kawhi Leonard, I forgot about Kawhi. Those are like the shots that like, all right, I'm gonna need a bucket. I'm gonna go to my mid-range shot because those shots are money. And even Curry has a 2-point jump shot that's pretty good and has a high percentage. So I think they should find a coach that lets them shoot mid-ranges. And I think they need to find a center because PJ Tucker has a lot of stuff to do on defense. Like I've seen a lot of jokes and memes about how Harden and Westbrook are thinking about their plan and what they're gonna do on offense, while PJ Tucker's just guarding 3 and 4 guys on defense. He's a great player, but I think they need a center, and the Clint Capella trade kind of hurts them. I think he was a really good center for them.
He would have been a great matchup for Anthony Davis because he's a great rim protector. Sure. But
they went their own way, and since D'Antoni's now gone, he wasn't fired. He just decided to go away. Daryl Morey, if he's still the GM, he has a lot of job to do on finding out what the team identity is, and a lot of players are on minimum contract just because they picked up some guys who are free agents, so they got to decide what they want to do.
Yeah. Also, at least before I sign off, with the importance of mid-ranges, what I've noticed is that you're going to need a mid-range, or you're going to need an isolation play in general, and mid-ranges in general, if you need to stop a run. Let's say you concede a 10-point run, right? The game is you're now up by 5. And you're going to need that one player or that one guy, that one player or that one play to, stop the run and maybe stop the pace, because if a team is starting to get on the run, they control the pace. And if you try and match that pace, it may not work. So I guess the importance of mid-ranges is that you can get a player who can maybe post up and hit a mid-range and hit it, to maybe stop the bleeding. Stop the bleeding, yeah. Yes. That's where you get the importance of players such as LeBron. The players such as LeBron, Kawhi, those players.
Kawhi, yeah,
the players who can hit those shots, and they can get to their spots, It's like, I can hit that shot. It's isolation, and it stops whatever they're doing, because if another team tries to emulate, they're not, the other team they may not be as hyped as a team that's on the run, so they may be more energized, etc., etc. So you need that one guy to stop everything. So that's where the pace down. That's where the mid-range comes in. Good old reliable mid-range. I'll also shout out DeMar DeRozan and Devin Booker for having excellent mid-range jumpers.
Oh yeah, DeRozan for sure.
I see a little with playing style. I think DeRozan emulates Kobe almost to a T, like almost. I think DeRozan has a smooth mid-range, but I think we've talked about everything. We've talked about the Lakers and Heat series in the finals and our thoughts on that. Also, a little recap of that. We've also given a tier list of every team during the playoffs. I guess that's all I have to say for now.
All right, see you guys.
See ya.